Welcome to MyGuy Reviews. Today we're going to be talking about another topic, another pop culture topic. And as always, we'll try and I'll give you a couple of clues. You try and guess what it is. Then we go through the topic and we kind of review their filmography. It could be their music library. It could be the games made by a particular provider. So it could be anything. And as always, one comes in hot, one comes in cold, and the person coming in cold has to do a lot of the lifting because you get given a lot of questions which you have no idea about, but you have to try to explain and muddle your way through it. So,
and I might not have seen or heard any of what you talk about. So
that's right, yeah. Okay, so I'll start with a couple of clues. Okay, so today we'll talk about a movie franchise.
Okay.
So it released. There's been some various releases of films throughout the years. So it's had a release last year. There's been films this year. There'll be forthcoming films as well in this franchise.
Okay.
So far, nothing.
Marvel.
No. It's a cinematic universe.
DC.
No.
Okay.
And hopefully this either you'll know straight away or a lot of people will know straight away. So one of the directors of the film is James Wan. He directed Fast and Furious 7. He also directed Aquaman.
Is it the Fast and Furious franchise?
No, it's not.
So close.
He also directed the films like Insidious and Saw. If that's
is it the Insidious franchise?
No.
Is it the Saw franchise?
It's not. But there is another franchise he directed.
Okay.
It's the first film, which kind of is the linchpin of the entire kind of franchise, is about the Warren family, a team of investigators, paranormal investigators.
Okay, I've heard of a series called Paranormal Activity.
No, not that one. So they are very famous for for being the investigator team who were there at Amityville Horror.
Okay.
But this film franchise hasn't touched on that element of it yet.
Right.
One of the films in the franchise stars a demonic doll.
Okay.
A nun.
Okay.
Still nothing.
Yeah, there's some ideas now, but okay. I don't think I'm gonna get this one.
I feel like I've kind of like spelt it out for you. One of the films in the franchise just got released a couple of days ago, maybe last weekend.
Okay. So are we talking about Annabelle, maybe?
Yes. So we're talking about the Conjuring multiverse. So this is a shared universe that started with the Conjuring film, which had Annabelle, which had
I've seen about half of these.
Which had the nun. She appeared in one of the other films. We had a lot of those characters. We've got the 2 Conjuring films. You got the 3 Annabelle films. We've got the nun, and we've got the La L'Oreal, I think, something like that. That's the spiritual movie that sits in this thing as well. And so what we'll do with this one is we'll talk a bit about the background and then get into the films, but I'm going to do it in chronological order. So not the films in which they got cinematically released, but the order in which they actually sit in the Conjuring timeline. So the Conjuring Universe timeline,
right.
We'll go through it in that manner, okay? So it just so happens that I was able to watch Nun over the weekend.
Right.
And I watched Annabelle Homecoming. So the movie about a doll. So basically, the first film is directed by James Wan, who also directed the Saw film, the Insidious franchise, as we said before, Fast and Furious, and Aquaman. And if you know James Wan and you've seen any of the other films, in Aquaman there's a reference to the Annabelle doll. There's a reference to the Annabelle. I might talk about it, but the actual doll itself is like more of a Raggedy Ann kind of doll. She's got like kind of red hair, and she's kind of a different kind of character to what we actually see in the films. And she's Easter egged throughout some of these films as well, in the universe as well, and some of the films he's worked on.
Right.
So basically, the Conjuring, to start off with, is just like following the Warren family and some of their most kind of famous hauntings or paranormal cases that they've been on. So we'll talk about each one when you explain what the films are about. But we'll talk about number one, number two, and we'll talk about how they all sit chronologically as well. And obviously, there's a third one, which I won't expect you to kind of review because it's not out yet. And
You're going to be teaching me about these things, right?
As we go along, and all the kind of spin-offs that's come off of that. So we've got the main kind of the two films, but then we've had the Nun film, we've had the Annabelle 3-film spin-off of that, and there's also kind of in the work there'll be other kind of films kicking off from there as well, which we'll talk about in Annabelle Creation, because they do play a small part in there, and most probably they'll be spinned off into a film as well. So without knowing all the films and the release order or how they sit chronologically, if you were to guess, there is 2, 3, so that's 5, 6, 7 films in total. Which film chronologically sits first?
What, release first or in world chronology?
In the Conjuring universe, and not the prologues, because some of the prologues go back to like the 14th century or early 19. We're talking about where the actual film is set. Okay. So maybe what would be the first one, do you think? Yes, the Nun, yeah. So Nun is the very first one in the series. Good. Straight out the bat, he's not going out of the park.
I think that's the only one I've seen. Good luck.
So this stars, this one is actually set in 1952. And that's the very first time we see, and I'm going to expect you to tell me what the story is, because you just said you've seen the film. So what's the story, or what's the haunting?
Nun. I don't even know if I'm thinking of the right film. Sure. There's a nun. Yes, there is a nun. And there's a nun that wants to do a bit more stuff. She gets like promoted to tag along with someone else going to do some investigation. Is that right? And then they go to a haunted like church thing that's got loads of
in Romania
stuff around the outside that stops people getting in, but stops spirits getting out or something.
That's right. Yeah, perfect. You remember this really well.
They go in and investigate, and stuff happens. It's kind of spooky. There's probably some blood involved. Everyone goes home happy.
Yeah, I think you know what, you smashed the nail on the head, right? So basically, it is exactly that. So they're in Romania. There's 2 Catholic nuns at the start of the film, and they're trying to get this key because there's a force which we're not shown at early on that's haunting the abbey or the place. And basically, one nun gets dragged off into the darkness. The other one jumps off and commits suicide. And that's kind of where I think Frenchie finds her, and then kind of the film starts where they do the investigation. And this is where we discover the demon Valak for the first time. She's the nun. She'll appear in Conjuring 2. So once the film Conjuring 2 came out, they obviously went back and they kind of explained her origin. So one's more cool. So this is the very first kind of demonic character who will then come across later on in the films, but this is kind of like the Conjuring film is kind of the linchpin. This kind of hangs off of this, and this is all part of this shared universe thing. So this was about there's a church, and in the Middle Ages, the Duke was obsessed with this kind of cult thing, and he wanted to summon a demon. But then the Christian knights came along, and they had this vial, which was the blood, which contained the blood of Jesus. And remember, they put it on her, and they were able to kind of just subdue the whole thing. And that was kind of it until World War II, where the bombs over the abbey unleashed Valak, and that's where we kind of take off. And this is kind of like as a very kind of weak story, I think. Because they want to get this demonic kind of character out there, and it's more about I think it was more about jump scares, and kind of the marketing was really good about this as well, like the way they did it. There's a really cool bit as well. You know, when she's walking through the corridor, I can't remember if you remember this bit.
Yeah, it's in the poster.
There's a nun slowly walking behind her, which has got like the black veil, and then you think, oh, something's going to happen, and she goes past kind of a corridor, and then the nun runs from the right hand side and just pounces on her.
Yeah,
There's some good jump scares in this film, but overall the story and kind of like the whole plot was kind of like, I don't think there was one. It was just kind of jump scare after jump scare.
Yeah, it was kind of cheaply put together, but I enjoyed it. Seeing as it's probably the only one I've seen of what we're about to talk about, I better give my opinion. Yeah, it seemed like it was quite a small budget, sort of focused little film, so it was quite I quite enjoyed it.
22 million US. I think it's one of the biggest budgets of their franchise. 22 million.
That's incredible, because it seemed like a B movie with just like some iconography, like nuns and crosses and stuff to get the scares there. So yeah, there wasn't much going for it, but it was quite good, quite enjoyable for me.
Yeah, and the film grossed 360 million, so the percentage gross is huge. I mean, when we talk about the franchise as a whole later on, you can see how well it did. I think also this had, a lot of the trailers and everything were built around the jump scares, and I think that delivered. There was a lot of good bits. There's a bit where she's looking in the mirror, and we could see Valak behind her, and then she spins round, and then she can't see anything, and then she spins back around, and then there's a jump scare again.
Yeah, obviously.
To be fair, I think it's a staple of the franchise, but I don't mind jump scares. I do like them. Like, I do go into watching a horror film thinking there's got to be a good one at least there, one I'm not expecting. So I don't have a problem with that. But if you got no plot and you got no story and it's just kind of convoluted and it's quite boring, then it doesn't hang together and there's no tension and it kind of like it isn't as kind of powerful.
Is there anything appealing to it for it in terms of knowing the rest of the franchise? Because obviously I didn't know anything about it. So
this one,
is there any reward for that?
Right at the very end there is. So so at the end when they're getting in the horse and carriage, Valak has imprinted a upside down cross on Frenchie.
Okay.
And then when the Warrens are doing the lecture, they talk about the demon possession in the very first film, and they're doing at the end of this film they show that lecture scene again, and you see Frenchie there, and that's when Valak grabs hold of I forget her name, but the lady Warren, and she confronts her and gives her the vision that her husband's going to die. So it does hold together within the universe. Obviously we've seen the character come later on, and that's kind of your link again between that film and where the Warrens pick up the kind of the files for this case.
But it just about works on its own.
Yeah. If you've never seen any others, you could watch this film by itself, and you'd understand there's a demonic nun who's causing havoc. Her name is Valak, and that's kind of all you need to know.
Havoc, Valak, nice.
Yes. I didn't even make that, but yeah. As you played a really nice game last time, we'll play something similar where we'll get you to rate the Rotten Tomato scores later.
Okay.
And so based on what
fun.
we've said, what kind of description I give it, you're gonna have to try and work out which is the best in the franchise, which is the worst, like that.
Okay.
So you've seen this one.
Idea.
Yeah. So you've seen this one. What is the recommendation? As we always kind of we review the film and we kind of give it our rating. Where do you put this? What's your rating? Because your rating system is different to mine. But yeah, where do you put it?
Not. I'm sticking with your rating system now anyway, because I think it's more useful. And yeah, I don't know if I'd even bother watching it actually. It's okay, but does it really need your time? I don't know. So I'd watch it if you're bored and you're on Netflix or something, I think.
For myself, because I love the franchise.
Yeah.
I would watch it. This wouldn't be one I'd run off to the cinema to watch. I could watch this on Sky pay-per-view or something. But after actually watching it, it's one that if it's on your streaming service, so it's currently on Sky Movies for those who have that. It's worth watching purely because you're not paying anything extra and you're not going out your way for it. So that's kind of where I base this one.
Yeah.
So the next one that comes in chronological order is Annabelle Creation.
Right.
So this is set, I think in the 1950s, but again this one's set slightly after the Nun movie. But these two, the Nun and this one, is very separate. So Annabelle is the character we see at the very first start of Conjuring. Now, where this is the second Annabelle film, but it's also a prequel, and it's the second in the chronological series as well. Yeah. So, what's the story, Balamori?
Well, I have actually seen all of the movies, trailers.
Oh, trailers, yeah.
I've seen all of the movie trailers, so I'm guessing it's about the creation of Annabelle, who is a haunted doll.
Yes.
That's all I've got.
Brilliant. That title said it all. So basically, the actual Annabelle doll appears in The Conjuring, and it's been sat behind the Warrens' kind of protected glass in their kind of room full of trinkets and stuff. But this one is set pre the first film, and it's the prequel, as you just said, and it basically shows us about the origin and the demon that initially possesses the doll. So we go back to the 1950s. There's a family there who start off the film where they've had a car accident and lost their daughter, and what they find is they want by any means to be able to communicate with her, doesn't matter how or what, and they find a way of doing that, and in doing so they invite a demon into this doll, and obviously all sorts of stuff happen, but then they open up their house to an orphanage as well.
Okay. Yeah,
so things go from good to better for them, and then the kids discover the doll, and the doll's whole thing is to get out of, similar to like Child's Play, to get out of the doll and to possess a human being, so then they can roam the earth freely.
So this is the Child's Play reboot.
This is Chucky, yeah. This is Chucky, the origin, right? So this is the very first Chucky movie, pretty much. And so this film is kind of, and it's very rare where similar thing happened to Ouija as well. So the first film wasn't that good, but the actual sequel, which was a prequel, was really good. And this, I think, was really good because this had a lot of good jump scares, but it also had there's a bit near the end where anyone who's seen the film will know what I mean. There's a spoiler alert. It's right at the very end where you see the girl start crawling. And all of that, I think they said, was all practical effects. It wasn't CGI. It looks really good. And again, it comes with some good jump scares. And in general, the actually acting of the little kids is quite good as well. So there's these various kids who've kind of come over, and they're all good as well. And then at the end of this film, how it connects to the next film. So Annabelle starts the very first film in a certain way.
Yeah.
This film leads directly into that starting.
Okay, nice.
So the ending is really clever how they've done that. How they kind of like once everything happens, these kids, they still need to be adopted. One of the girls gets adopted. She then grows up, and she's the girl at the very start of the very first Annabelle movie.
Nice.
And it's and this one actually, if anyone hasn't seen it and thinking where should they start off with, if you've seen any of the Conjuring films, if you've seen the Annabelle, anything, this is a great kind of start point. This is a really good film. And it's kind of self-contained in that it's just all about the doll.
Yeah.
It has Easter eggs and it connects to the wider universe, but in general, it isn't anything to do with the Warrens yet. Because at the end, it connects back to movie number 1, which connects back to the main franchise. So if you want to look at a self-contained movie, this is a good starting point as well. So you can go in, you can watch it, and it's really good. This one again costs 15 million, so even less than the last one, and grossed 300 million.
Nice.
So it did incredibly well in the box office as well.
Yeah, the whole series has taken off quite well, hasn't it? Really.
Yeah, they all started off as small kind of horror films, and then what's happened as time goes on, they've all started to make more and more as people become more and more aware of the franchise, and kind of like when you've got a couple of really good strong films in your franchise, it will pull you through the bad ones, because you're not going to have an entire multi-channel movie or franchise, whatever you want to call it, where every film's good. You're going to have some bad ones. So there's enough good in this that kind of pulls people back to watch the next one to see what's going to happen next.
Okay.
And also this one didn't introduce any new characters that potentially could appear in other films. So it's really good. If you've not seen any, that's the perfect one to start off with.
Yeah, so you'd recommend watching the prequel first?
Yeah, so for me, this is one that I would say cinema.
Cinema, okay.
Go
excellent.
out your way watching the cinema, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bit too late for that for me, but I agree.
Then that brings us on to kind of like the next film in the list, which is Annabelle. So this is the first Annabelle film.
Yeah.
And this is the first instance that the creepy doll got her first kind of movie by herself.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, what's the story? What's it about?
Is this one where they find Annabelle in like an antique shop?
That's the very end of the film, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And she buys the doll for her daughter. Yep. One of the nursing students who are at this. Yep. You connected the ending really well.
Happened, though, the doll is obviously already haunted, and
yes,
and there's a scene in a house in some rooms, and it's quite a scary doll. There's a kid involved somewhere.
There's always a kid involved, yeah.
I'm getting all of that from flashbacks from the trailers.
Okay, so the start of the film is where the previous film ends. So when the film ends, a creation, spoiler alert, the little girl at the end of the film has been possessed by the doll. So she's got the demon inside her. So when this film starts, she's joined a cult, and her boyfriend go back to the house of her adopted parents, and she kills them, or they kill them. And that's when the neighbor comes in, and he kills the boyfriend.
Yeah.
And then the woman attacks the pregnant lady, his wife, and she sees the Annabelle doll. She gets beaten and she dies, but she then the demon leaves her body and goes into the Annabelle doll again. So now we've gone back to where the doll has been repossessed again with the same demon.
And Chucky has his task ahead of him again.
Yes, and now he has to torment this family and to try and get back out. And that's kind of the premise of this one, until the very end, where the doll is bought in the antique shop, which you summed up perfectly, and by the mum, and gives it to her daughter, one of the nurses from the first film.
Okay.
So yes, that's pretty much the first film. And to be fair, I was very disappointed with this because The Conjuring is such a good film, and the start of the film, even though nothing happens, it just felt so intense, and it genuinely felt quite scary when you see the doll do nothing. So when they were going to make a film about Annabelle, I was really excited. I thought this is kind of like, this will be a great film, you know, because this is a character who we've seen but we haven't seen do anything yet. So I was just looking forward to it. And actually, I was really disappointed with the film. I think it was kind of boring. The start is fine, and then the end connects to the original film, so they're all fine, but it's the middle bit. It's the bulk of the movie.
Right, most of the movie. Yeah, I mean, when this was, obviously this came off the back of The Conjuring, like you say.
Yeah.
And also Insidious was around as well by then, so there was interest in horror again, which was good, big cinema horror. And then obviously you pick a doll, it's a creepy idea. But like you said, maybe it was a bit of a sellout of on the back of The Conjuring, and I guess by the sounds of it, it didn't really do what it could have done with a scary doll theme. Yeah.
Exactly. They could have taken it, I think, because they were quite new to the universe at that point, where creation was made after. So now you've got a good franchise, you've got a good kind of like jumping off point.
Yeah.
And James Wan is understanding kind of like how I'm going to produce these films, how we're going to do the story, how we're going to connect them. I think initially it's just a case of, well, there's this character in the first film which became a star of the film, and let's make a film around that character. And then it just be like, okay, so we know how it'll start, we know how it'll end, let's just do filler in the middle of bits and pieces and some jump scares.
Yeah, scary jump scares. Yeah.
Because there's a bit where she's gone down this she's upstairs and she's walking around this room and she's being chased by the demon, and she's getting into the lift, and you press the button in the lift, all of that. And I was just like bored. I was almost like, demon, just kill her. So I wasn't invested. But when I watched The Seed of Chucky, the VOD film, there's a similar thing there, and I was invested in the kid to run away from Chucky, because the character, I kind of liked that character, and I didn't like these lot that much. So I was just almost like, doll, kill them, right? I'm just annoyed. But yeah, so that's kind of like where I am. So with this one, I would say watch it on a streaming service, because it's all part of the same universe. But don't go out your way to watch it. You're not missing out on much.
Yes.
And what's your rating on?
Yes, I agree. Watch it on streaming service. I haven't seen it. I shall do so at some point. It sounds like it's got some nice elements of of classic sort of horror, but it just hasn't really tied it together with a full-on story. So it sounds like a bit of a cheap shot. It's probably worth a watch.
Yeah,
I'd give it a try.
I think if you're watching them back to back, if you watch Creation first and then you watch this, you might enjoy this slightly better than you may have done, because the first one, I think the prequel is much better, and that kind of. But then at the same time, does that mean if you watch something so good and then you watch something mediocre, show you more flaws?
I would watch Annabelle Creation and then watch this one after it while you're sort of eating or something. Chat to people or something. I don't know. And then the next film could come on and you can invest your interest again.
Yeah. So that's 3 films deep into the franchise, right? And now we actually come back to the film that was released first. So chronologically, there was 3 films that happened before the very first Conjuring film. Okay. What was the story?
What film are we talking about?
The Conjuring, the first one.
Okay, we're talking about The Conjuring. Someone conjures something. Probably something demonic. And then people are like, oh my gosh, there's this jump scares everywhere. And then someone comes along who's like knows stuff about stuff like that, and then it all gets fixed up kind of after people get scared and die and stuff. At the end.
I think you couldn't have summarized it any worse than that. So the Conjuring is the very first kind of film in the franchise, and the best thing about this film is there's a start which has the Annabelle doll, but it has them doing a case file, and then ends with a nice little nod to Amityville Horror, where they talk about another case that they've been given to do with another house somewhere, another thing. But really, if that film had no more sequels or no franchise, nothing, that was enough. There was enough in there. There was no kind of like, look, we're building to this shared universe. It was just literally, look, there's a good horror film. And then if this horror film works, we've showed you this room full of things. And depending on which kind of thing gets the most kind of social media buzz or something, we'll then kind of work off of that. And I think that's what they did so well with this one.
Smart idea, yeah.
Make a good first film.
Yeah.
Don't worry about kind of let's spin off and let's do multiple sequels, filling in gaps later on. Let's just do a good start, middle, and end. And not
like Spider-Man.
Exactly, Spider-Man, the DCEU movie, even the new Mummy film, which starred Tom Cruise. Like all these films everything's trying to be a franchise. Even the last Transformers film, they were like, oh, we're building towards a shared universe. They just make a good film. Make a good film. Show people things. You don't have to kind of like be like, okay, we'll resolve this in the next film, or we'll resolve that in a future film.
That's what you don't want. You don't want loose ends. You want a satisfying ending.
Yeah, and similar happened with Independence Day 2, where there was talk about, oh, there's fights in other worlds and there's other things happening. All that sounded really exciting, but just put it in this film. Just make this good film, and then if it works, you can kind of spin off whatever you want. And that's what they did really well with this Conjuring film. And I remember when I watched this film, it was the first film that made me think, considering this is James Wan who directed the very first Saw film, and everyone's kind of like, oh, there's this whole torture porn kind of horror genre now because of that kind of film, and there's loads of kind of spin-offs and loads of people kind of imitating that. So this was the first horror film that I remember watching, which didn't have any profanity, didn't have any blood, and still had like a 15 certificate rating next to it, or in America an R rating, because it was so intense and it was so kind of scary, and it just didn't have none of the kind of gore or anything that automatically gives it that rating. It was just purely because of the way the film was made.
Just from scares.
Yeah.
Nice.
This film is the first time we get introduced to Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. Can't pronounce her name, but the Warrens, Ed and Lauren. And we're going to follow kind of like one case, just a pure paranormal investigation case. They go to a farmhouse in Rhode Island, which has like 5 kids, I think it is, and they're being kind of, there's a lot of paranormal activity going on, and they're just there to investigate that one thing. And I remember watching the film, there was a lot of doors would slam, jump scares and stuff. There's a really cool bit where she's going downstairs to the basement, but she stops at the top of the stairs, and then someone claps behind her. And those bits, all those kind of little things are so cool in the film.
I think I've seen that. Maybe I've seen it in the trailer or something.
You might have done. It's the one where they're outside a house, and it's got a swing, I think, outside the house.
Yeah.
But it's not a swing. It's a hang. What's that thing you hang yourself with rope? There you go.
Yeah.
It's just the one that's got like a tree and got a rope underneath. And
yeah.
And Lauren has like visions and stuff, and she's kind of been able to see things that could have happened in the future, that sort of thing. And she kind of pieces together things. And Ed kind of uses kind of like exorcism, and they've got like their bunch of tricks on how they can kind of save them. And this, to be fair, just had like it had a start, middle, and end, and they get rid of the evil at the end of it. And I think this is the one where they pick up the trinket, which was the music box as well. And this is where they bring it back home. But that's what I liked about it. It's like, they don't need to give us anything else. The start was all about Annabelle, and then they take the doll off the nurse, and that was just like, it was so good. It was just like, there's a third. You see Annabelle outside the house, you see a third, and she'd be outside the room, and those guys were just explaining what happened. And I remember watching it thinking, I'm not really seeing anything, but this seems quite scary.
Yeah.
And
that's
the whole film.
How good movies are made. You don't show everything. Unfortunately, there's so much money in CGI now that you just see everything, and it isn't scary.
Yeah, and it comes back from a guy who created and kicked off the Saw franchise, where it's known for all of its torture traps, where they have those bear traps, they have like knives, they have glass and things, and he's trying to get his hands out, all sorts of kind of cuts and all sorts of crazy stuff, where they show you to a film franchise where he's putting in horror, but to the point where it's not showing you the horror in a way.
Yeah,
it's incredible the way it's
creating it in your mind with the sound and stuff.
Yeah. And it's just it's unusual, because considering then he went on to do Aquaman, where he just goes from location to location, and the set pieces are CGI filled, huge kind of like action sequences, to even the Fast and Furious film, which was the same. And this is the same guy who went away and made a horror film like this, and the Insidious films.
He showed he knew what he was doing after all.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. So and this isn't the first time he's worked with Patrick Wilson as well. So he did the Insidious films with him. He also starred as something in Aquaman as well. So James Wan, once you're in there, I mean, and he likes you, he'll just reuse you in all these films. It's for me. I remember a lot of people were talking about how good it is. It's like the scariest movie of all time for many years, and also so it was really well kind of received. And this is one I did watch in the cinema, and I'd highly recommend, if there is that option still. This is a cinematic release.
In 20 years when they show it again.
Yes, when they do like a shared universe chronological order viewing, you can skip the first one, skip none, get in time to watch Creation, go take an hour and a half nap, or leave for the other one, and come back in time for the Conjuring.
Yeah, it sounds like one I'd want to watch in the cinema, definitely. For the full effect of the horror. Be surrounded by it all.
But do you remember the film?
No, I haven't seen the film. I would definitely go and see it in the cinema if I had the opportunity now.
So this is the very first one. So it's kind of like they also use that line that they do in like certain horror films, based off of true events.
Oh yeah.
Because those case files in theory are true case files.
Yeah.
Obviously, so a lot of it may be fabricated for cinematic use, but so some of that stuff is real. And that's kind of like, if you've got a good solid base, you can then build your universe around it, or multiple sequels and stuff after that. So the next one, which I know you haven't seen, but I'm going to leave for you to kind of like come in and kind of tell me what's what, is Annabelle Comes Home.
Oh, right. So I didn't even know there was an Annabelle Comes Home.
There's Annabelle 3. Yeah, it just got released.
Okay.
In the US, got a June 26th release date. Yeah, so it's out. It's in the cinema, and it's set 1 year after The Conjuring. But what's it about?
I'm guessing Annabelle Comes Home. I'm seeing Spider-Man Homecoming, but with Annabelle instead.
That's right. She has a homecoming ball.
Yeah, that's right. Iron Man comes along and introduces her to the family.
There are elements of Avengers in this film I'll talk about in a minute, but yeah, it is pretty much that. It's like Annabelle come home. So
maybe they're trying to introduce her properly into the Conjuring world.
Again, for the third time, sure they are. Yes.
But more solidly this time. No sort of hints anymore. This is full on. ACU, CCU. I don't know. Universe.
Conjuring Cinematic Universe. Yeah. So this what I liked about this one was the start is really good. So as we've seen in the previous films, we've got the nurses who are talking about Annabelle, and they drop her off to Patrick Wilson and the Warrens. Basically, then they drive home with the doll for the first time, so
just like I said.
Yeah, so they're bringing her home, literally.
Yeah.
On the way home, I think he has a tire puncture or something. But then, the doll sat there, and Laurie, who sat in the car, she hears a voice, "I like your doll," and that was so cool. I was like, "Oh, that's a throwback to the first film, which wasn't that good, but where the lady who's got the demonic possession in her is about to kind of like do the soul swap with the doll. She says that to the pregnant lady, so that was a cool little callback as well. But then they go back home and they put it behind this kind of like, I think it's called it's a glass door basically, right? Because you've seen it in the film, in the original films, and that cabinet is blessed by the priest. So nice. In theory, it shouldn't come out. That's so where this film then happens is then it kind of then goes a few years ahead. So it's a year. I think it's set a year or two after The Conjuring, but in between Conjuring 1 and Conjuring 2. So they leave their daughter at home with a babysitter, and as you'd expect, things will start to go wrong. Anything and everything you can imagine, but the reason why it kind of opens up and why someone goes into the room is quite good, and it's quite sad in a way. But there's a reason why the girl goes in there. It's because she's lost her dad, and she wants to try to communicate with him because she feels that his passing was her fault when it wasn't. But it's just to get that closure, hence why she goes in there. But the reason why I said it's kind of like Avengers Assembled, so you've got this room full of trinkets, and you've got lots of different kind of characters who potentially will spin off into their own horror film. Yeah. Not only do you have Annabelle the doll, which could be our Iron Man, you get introduced to the ferryman, who could be, in this case, Captain America. Right. You get introduced to this evil or devil hound. It's like a CGI monster, so that could be the Hulk. You also get introduced to the bride as well, so whoever wears this bride's veil.
Oh yeah.
And that initially I thought it was to do with the next film in the franchise, but it's not. It's actually a separate character, and that could be like your Black Widow. So they all assemble together to fight against the kids.
Imagine.
And that's why this is more kind of like Avengers Assemble in the Conjuring Cinematic Universe. So while we've had, everyone's had their own solo film. Valak's had one, Annabelle's on number 3, but now they've all not all, but they've come together with new Avengers, and they're causing havoc in this house.
So they're actually
And that,
ganging up on this one, are they?
yeah, and that
Oh,
way
wow.
it's quite cool, because you've got like new because we're now 5 or 6 films into the film franchise. Now you can chuck in more things. So when it's your first film, concentrate on making a good first film, and then everyone can have their own good solo films, and then you can do a Civil War, you can do Avengers Assemble. You can't just go straight into Justice League and say, oh, it's going to work, or Batman v Superman, it's going to work, or even Mummy. You're just like in the Mummy, you're like, oh yeah, but that's Russell Crowe and he's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It doesn't work. You have to build to it slowly, and those elements for me actually work, because now when I go back into the Warren house and you get pan shot of all of these little trinkets and all these artifacts, and there's some of them possessed and some of them have evil demonic characters behind them. I'm interested in all of that now. I'm more and more invested in. So when I see new characters come, I'm like, yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, you're interested in the music box and stuff now.
Yeah, because I remember that from a previous film, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's why it's here. And the next trinket or the next thing they're going to bring, well, that's the case they're currently on, and they're going to bring that in, stuff like that, because we've seen the other films, and we're now kind of like, oh, you can piece it together that way. So this one kind of like it's there, it's in their house, but without the Warrens, and it's kind of fighting against the kids, the babysitters. So the ferryman it's basically a folk story, where people died, you put coins over their eyes, and the ferryman would then ferry them from the land of the living to the land of the dead.
Yeah.
And he basically, to be fair, like, as a there are some good jump scares with him, but I wouldn't be too scared of him. Like, if he throws money at me, I'll just happily take that money and I'll run down to a vending machine. I'll be buying some chocolates, maybe a Diet Coke, who knows? I'll go crazy, because this is pretty cool. This guy just chucked some money at me. Exactly. Wow. He's giving me money, right? He's just chucking it at me. I'm like, yes, a bag of money. Thank you very much. Now, but the kind of the CGI hound I'd be a bit more scared of, but it is a dog at the end of the day. So how scared can I be of a dog?
Stroke it.
I would happily just give it a little cuddle. I'll be like, come here.
Dogs love me.
Exactly, don't they? It doesn't matter how big they are. It doesn't matter how demonic they are.
They just want to play and have their belly rubbed and stuff.
Exactly. I mean, there's not much to it. Like, they're just a cute little thing. And they just want to kind of play. That's all dogs want. All you need to do is give him something that he'll get interested in, and you can throw it, and he'll go fetch it.
Give him a bone or a stick, something. Preferably something that's not going to go up in flames.
Yeah. Exactly. Or it can blow up once he's fetched it. Ka-ching. Just throw some dynamite, and he'll go fetch it, and then it just blows up in his mouth.
Yeah, but it'll be fine because there's a hellhound, so.
Yes. Now the actual bride bit was quite cool, because
I like a good.
So they had a veil in the thing, and then one of the girls puts it on, and you think, oh, it's already possessed her, but it hasn't really possessed her yet. There's a bit where she gets chased by the demon, she gets fake stabbed by the demon, and then, as in all kind of, not all, but in so many horror films, you have that bit where it spews the dark goo into her and then possesses her. Yeah. And that's how they kind of transfer the demonic.
Dark goo. Lovely.
Now, if you're thinking, oh, that's amazing, she's now possessed, how do you unpossess her? Remember, these kids have no exorcism powers. How do you think they unpossess the girl?
They've got no skills.
They have no skills.
They've got no skills and no tools.
No tools.
No crosses.
They have crosses, yeah.
Okay, do they use a cross?
Not to exercise her, no. They don't use a cross.
They don't crucify her, do they?
No, they don't.
They don't marry her off, do they? I don't know.
Oh, that would have been quite good, but no, they did that.
Marry her off to Iron Man?
No. Annabelle and her they could hook up, sure.
Yeah. Okay, let me in.
So we're looking at the 1970s, right? So the Warrens aren't there. Who are the people who would normally carry out? There's no priests in the house because it's just the kids. Yeah. So the next best thing, TV was on, and they were doing an exorcism on the TV.
Oh, okay.
And that exorcises the ghost out of her.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, that's happened before. I've seen people do that on TV, so that's quite clever.
And
Or was it the
then
actual Exorcist on the TV?
no, it was one of their case files. It's one of the exorcisms they were doing, and that's how they kind of were able to kind of get her out. Yeah.
Nice.
There's also a TV that predicts the future. I think it was. It seemed like it was showing stuff from about a certain period of time ahead of time, which is quite cool.
Awesome.
And Annabelle, she's still the linchpin character of the movie, and she's but the other characters were quite cool, and I guess they'll get their own spin-off films as well. So it's interesting to see them all come to life as well and kind of do their little things. And the doll kind of takes on a different embodiment to try and trick the kids into trying possessing them. She does her usual kind of things. Again, a lot of jump scares in this film. I think this had more jump scares than Valet in The Nun. So if you thought The Nun had jump scares and you were like, whoa, that was good, or no, I hate that, then this film's got more of them. So depending on what your opinion is, it's either going to be, I love it, or it's too many.
Epic. Sounds epic. Annabelle Assemble.
Yeah, this is what it should have been called, Annabelle Assembled, right? Or and they should have maybe put a couple more They should have put like the Crooked Man in here as well, because he gets referred to in Conjuring, either 1 or 2, but one of, I think maybe the first one because he's in the music thing. But so that's kind of where it came from. So the idea is like she's there, but then there's these other, because once you're in that room. And you start awakening things, anything can happen, and that's kind of where the film kind of goes to. And I quite like, now that I've seen the first one, I've seen the second, the spin-offs, and they've all been standalone-ish, even though they connect to the multiverse. Now you can bring them all together and have a Civil War kind of fight, and I'm like, I like this.
Awesome.
But it would have been also at the same time, would have been good if they'd had somehow the Nun in here, because we've seen her before. Maybe a character we've seen previously with Annabelle. But still, I actually quite enjoyed this film.
I think they're saving those. They're saving those characters for a real and the next Assemble. You don't want to use everything out straight out the gate.
No, because you still got to go through Infinity War, and you got to end game it, right? So you still got to do a moment where you still got to have a moment where the villains win, and then an end game where a bunch of key characters die, and the universe is no longer the same again.
Well, The Conjuring is obviously the Iron Man series 1, 2, 3.
But there isn't a 3 yet.
But 3's on its way.
Annabelle's had 3.
Annabelle. Well, that's Captain America. He's had 3. That's fine. And
where does the Nun fit into all of this? Is Nun?
The Nun is an intro film, so I don't know. Ant-Man.
Yeah, that's your kind of like ease into the franchise, into the whole kind of the shared universe. Yeah.
But we've still got to get extra characters for an Assemble movie.
So I guess now that they've introduced us with these 3 new characters, they can have their own spin-off movies, and we can see kind of how they go away.
Yeah.
But
we can go to a different dimension.
Yeah, and then somehow they all meet back at the house, because that's the kind of like the Avengers Tower.
Yeah.
And that's where everything kind of like is the anchor of the whole universe.
Yeah,
and
but
maybe
then
something happens.
There's going to be a couple of movies that are really boring, where Annabelle like takes charge of everything and gets miserable, that Civil War style. Like, this is my tower, this is my house. We could do things my way.
I think if they all just possessed various kids, and then they started off as the possessed kids in like
cool.
Infinity War happens, their version, and they just at the end of the film, all these various kids are possessed with the demonic characters, be it the Nun, be it Annabelle, the ferryman, whatever. And then the next film, the Warrens come home and they have to fight each one of those demon kids.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, they do the 5-year time jump. And then they have to explain it in their universe.
Yeah. And then someone chops Thanos' head off.
Yeah. Annabelle doll's head off.
Yes. We'll have Thor come and do that. Chris Hemsworth is in everything now, so yeah, we'll have him come in for that one bit.
Yeah, just purely just purely to come in and chop her head off when anyone could have done that previously.
Yes. I'm
So
looking forward to this series now.
I quite like this film. I mean, because only purely because I'm invested in the franchise and the cinematic universe. But as a film itself, it's fine. I was just kind of interesting to see all the various characters come to life inside the room, seeing all the kind of various things that we've known about sitting in their kind of treasure trove. So for all of those things, I enjoyed it, and this for me is one of those I'd watch on demand. I'd rent it out on Sky Movies or something. It's not a cinematic, but it's definitely worth a watch.
Oh, that's a shame. I haven't seen it, so I was thinking cinema for this one.
Yeah, I mean it's out in cinema now, so you could go watch it.
So yeah, I mean as soon as it's out in the UK, I'll probably be watching this one now. Yeah. So it sounds like the creators have got into their stride with this one.
Yeah, I think now they can have some fun, right? They can just go because they've set the tone for the various things. So you still get those kind of long shots, those intense kind of nothing happening, and then you get the jump scares. You've got a blueprint of what your films tend to be like, but now you've got a various demonic characters you can just bring in and out of your film as and when you need to. And so that one's set in, I think, like 91 or 92. And then the next one is a film that came out this year, The Curse of La L'Oreal, something like that. Laura.
Okay.
And this was never advertised as part of the Conjuring kind of franchise or part of it, but there are links to it, and so it's kind of it's part of the same universe. But it just never was advertised as a direct. Yes, it's part of this franchise. There is a nice Easter egg in here with regards to the Annabelle doll. One of the kids has it, and there is the priest who appears in this film, also appears in the Conjuring films as well, to kind of linking the films together. So without me even pronouncing the name of it correctly, what's the story? What's it all about?
It's about the curse of a French lady.
No, it's also known as the curse of the weeping woman.
Okay.
I'll give you the tagline of the film.
Okay. Yeah.
She wants your children.
Oh, okay. I think I saw the trailer for this one. Yeah. There's a lady who's haunting maybe a woodland area. I don't know where it is.
In the picture she is, yeah.
Yeah, in the poster. And she wants your children.
Yes, she does.
Yes, that's it.
So it starts off in Mexico. So the lady basically is she finds out, I think, her husband was cheating on her. So then what she does is she, out of kind of rage and kind of like guilt or whatever it is, she then drowns her kids, her children.
Okay.
And then with the guilt and everything that went with that, she then commits suicide herself. And now she's out kind of trying to take people's kids because she thinks they belong to her or remind her of her own kids.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me of another film already, but...
It does, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of films that's similar to this, like the film Mama, which was about the two girls, remember, who were found in the woodlands, who were being looked after a possession of a lady, again, who thought they were her kids. Yeah. And it follows something similar to that, where it's like you got the demonic character who's trying to get these kids and she wants to kill them because then she can take them and she just wants them, and that's kind of the whole thing behind it. But it is kind of an old folk tale in Mexico, where that's where this kind of story came from, and some people believe it to be true. Yeah, and this is one of the very few trailers in the whole franchise that I remember watching, and it wasn't a trailer. I think it was a clip that came out first, and they're sat in the car and it's pitch dark, and then she came towards the door or something. And I remember watching this, and then as I normally do walk, because we live in England, it's always cold and dark in the morning. And where I live, they only have a certain number of lights because we now save money. Our council does. And they turn on one light, and then there'll be a number. No, quite a few houses down where I won't see another light. And I remember seeing this and then taking the two Labradors for a walk in the morning. And it was pitch dark, and it's the first time I felt, wow, that trailer kind of stuck with me a little bit. It spooked me in the morning. And it's the first time I've had that feeling of that after watching something like a trailer. That is obviously when you watch a film, watching the cinema, it's dark, you might walk out and you might be a little bit scared. But it's the first time I've had that with a trailer or a clip of a film when I'm walking in the morning. But lucky I got two dogs on me, so and plus I'm not a kid, so she's not interested in me, she wants his children, so I was all right. But it was quite scary for that little walk. And basically it follows a mum and her two kids who are kind of like being hounded by this character, and she meets a nun, and I can't remember his name. Is it Raphael? I think his name is. Yeah, it is Raphael, and right. He arrives at the house, and they're setting up candles, and they do the whole exorcism and all that kind of stuff. And this one actually ends with kind of a happy ending, where kind of the film ends, they resolve the issue, and there's no kind of post-credit kind of a horror blah or anything. Like in Annabelle 1, the film ends and she's kind of Annabelle Creation, where the film ends and she's possessed, and they kind of lead you into the second film where they have the killings and stuff. Annabelle 2, the creation, and the first one, the doll is still out there. Conjuring kind of ends, and they've resolved that issue, but there's other demonic kind of things going around. But in number 2 it ends, and we'll talk about that a bit later, but there's a thing there. Valak, at the end of her film, she possesses someone else. So this was the first one where it just ends, bookends, and there's nothing else after that.
I think most horror movies do good at leaving a little something at the end anyway. So it makes sense in all the other movies to always leave something that just makes you a little bit scared afterwards, that there could be something still out there. But I think also, it's also quite typical maybe of this sort of story to have a happy ending, sort of, because it's around motherhood and people want to see a happy motherhood ending.
So she's investigating abuse in children, and then they link it back to this evil spirit who's doing all of that. So, and obviously as a mum herself, she's kind of like worried about it, and and then she's being kind of terrorized, and then the priest helps her, all that stuff. But then so the film does end, and then she just sees in the house, she sees these little puddles which look like tears. So it's almost like the entity cried, and it's like but the entity they destroyed as well at the same time. So in that sense, it was good to see a separate film which had a random link to the franchise as a whole. So one of the kids in this film holds a Raggedy Ann doll that looks just like the original Conjuring, the original Annabelle doll. So the actual doll that's in the Warren household, there's pictures of it online, you can see what it looks like, but it looks nothing like the ones used in the film. And what they did in this film, they actually put that doll-like character in the film, so it's like a nice little Easter egg to say we're part of the same universe. And then you got the priest as well, who's part of this, and he's part of the main Conjuring film. But other than that, there's no kind of links, there's no kind of callbacks. And when I saw this veil in this film, and then I watched Annabelle Avengers Assembled, I thought the bride was her because of the veil and the way it looked, but it actually was a new character. Either way, both would have been cool. But it just goes to show they've got enough kind of characters that they can lean on and they can get more stuff out of. And this is kind of a good idea. Go away, make a film, have a very loose reference to the main franchise, and see if people like it. If they don't, you can just disassociate it with the whole franchise and just say it was just a kind of like, it's just a film, it's not real spin-off, not true spin-off film. And that's kind of like where I'd put it as well. It's like, if it's on the streaming service, watch it. If you're going out your way and paying money for it, I'd say avoid it.
Me too, fine. I agree.
So then that brings us to the penultimate film in the last film, or the penultimate film so far, because there's one more film to come out this year, and that will be Conjuring 3. But for now, Conjuring 2 is the final film in the whole cinematic universe.
Yes.
And what's this one about?
I'd say it's very much like the first film, but a sequel.
Exactly that. But do you remember this film? Do you remember watching it or
I
anything?
haven't seen any of these films.
Okay, so this one, they come to England in Enfield.
Yeah.
It's about haunting in England. So this, again,
Okay.
each time they always say it's one of their famous cases. So the Enfield haunting is supposed to be quite a famous haunting, I
Yeah.
guess. And again, I think this investigation is set before Amityville or after Amityville. Anyway, the main one they haven't done yet is the Amityville house. Like maybe Conjuring 3 will go there, but this
Okay.
one.
So none of the Amityvilles are in the universe yet.
So far, no. They
They
mentioned
want to
them.
make their own one because there's
Yeah.
been 2 Amityville horror movies at least.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they have. But there's got nothing to do with this so far.
Okay.
And
So it's doing the Conjuring 2 at the moment. Yeah. Enfield.
Yeah. And what they talk about is the case file, and they talk about location. I can't remember where in America, but they do mention it by that way, but they don't refer to it as Amityville Horror or the Amityville House yet. So
Yeah.
this one, they come to good old England. Blighty. All right, mate. All that Cockney slang, all that kind of stuff. But so again, they leave their kid at home. So, she's just had this traumatic affair with Avengers Assembled, right? And they came home and they comforted her or whatever. But now, at the end, I forgot to say, so Annabelle home come in, they go, after everything happens, they have a birthday party for her. They throw this birthday party.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a bit
Give her
random.
loads of new haunted toys.
That's what I was thinking. It's like, last thing she wants is to open more presents with dolls and kind of like, I don't know, Jack in the Box or something. Because these are the 70s. What kind of gifts do you get?
Like the candles. Oh, it came back to light again. Oh,
Or
funny.
you make a Lego man or woman, and that possesses and comes to life and kills you.
Oh,
So,
Lego, that would be great.
I'm guessing in the 70s it was around. But so this one, yeah. So again, this one is based in kind of Enfield, and this also introduces the nun for the first time, and the crooked man who's getting his own kind of spin-off as well. Yeah. So based on everything I've said so far, you said it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
More of the same, but in London. Well, not in Enfield. Yeah. Basically, you're pretty much right. So this is kind of like they go to London in Enfield, and they're basically, I think one of the kids is sleepwalking, and in their dreams they see an entity, like an angry elderly man who sits on the armchair. And I think when they go to the house, the armchair was kind of was shaking or something.
Yeah.
And as the kind of story goes on, and they find out more about the entity, about this old man who's in the house, but actually, what happens? Twist. There's a character who's behind him, controlling and pulling the strings. Ooh.
In the vision.
No, in the house itself. In the vision.
Okay.
I mean, when you keep thinking Avengers, no, there's no vision. He's dead. We saw him die.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And it just so happens it's the nun who's behind it all. So Valak, who we see in the very first film in the kind of the chronological order, she's actually the one who's kind of behind it all. And there's the haunting kind of starts with, and in this one, I think it's just like she has to do a possession, exorcism, but she just has to say her name, and that makes her disappear or something.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's pretty much similar to the first one. We have a lot of kind of intense moments, something shakes, something jump scares. Again, it's a similar format as to what we've seen before, but again, it's really good. They've got a good case. They're looking at just one thing. They've given us a new character in the Crooked Man, but he's very kind of minor in all of this. But it's just, look, hey guys, we've got this other thing that may potentially spin off into a movie, and they just kind of make a solid movie again, which is a sequel to the last one, without kind of being, okay, we won't resolve this film until the third film in the franchise, or this won't be resolved till you watch The Nun. No, this actually resolves itself. And that's what I like about the Conjuring films. They resolve themselves, but they give you bits that we could spin off later on. And this, again, is the same thing. There's a possession, it's affecting the house, and, they don't know what's going on. and this time isn't as straightforward as the first one.
Yeah.
And again, they just kind of resolve it at the end of it. And this is the one where she has visions of Patrick Wilson dying as well. And yeah, so vision. so that might come true in the third film. We don't know yet. And I quite enjoyed it because it's just kind of it's a start and end again, but it is a sequel and it's a new case file, and it does follow a lot of the traits of the first one. It's quite like, here's a case, they go to the house, it gets haunted, and they see the things for themselves, and then they resolve it. But
that's a solid basis for a series, because you can just keep it going, can't you? Just move to the next case, do a solid, good film based on that one situation, and then move on again.
Yeah, and for me, this is another one of those films where it's one that I watched in the cinema, and I'd again recommend this as a cinematic watch, because if you like the first one, you'll enjoy this one. If you like any of the other ones, you'll enjoy it as well, because this is just a solid, self-contained movie. And it does everything you want it to, and it resolves itself at the end as well. There isn't no kind of, we'll wait for the third film, and then there'll be a payoff, or the fourth film, and there'll be a payoff.
Sounds like you should watch it in the cinema after The Conjuring.
After The Conjuring.
Yeah.
So now we'll play that game that we played last time that you made me play, which I really enjoyed, right? So so we've gone through it in. So I'll give you the film list again, just in case you've forgotten them, in chronological order, and then you need to rank them.
Then Annabelle Creation, then
Yes.
Annabelle.
Yes.
Then The Conjuring.
Yes.
Then Annabelle Homecoming.
Yep.
And then Conjuring 2.
The Curse of...
The Curse of La Llorona.
Yeah, that's the one. And then Conjuring 2. So based on those films, now you have to give me an order on how Rotten Tomatoes ranked them. Now you don't even remember watching these films, so it'll be interesting to see how you rank them
based on your reviews, really. I'd definitely put The Nun near the bottom. Maybe the bottom. I might have to write the list out to be able to describe it to you.
If you write down the list, go for one down.
Yeah, okay, so the top one would have to be one of the Conjuring movies. Probably Conjuring. Conjuring 2's got a bit more mystery to it, so let's put Conjuring 2 at the top.
Okay, yep, Conjuring 2 is your top choice.
Then The Conjuring.
Yep, second.
Then Annabelle, because that was a big movie.
Yeah, okay, that's your third one.
Then we'll put Annabelle Creations on there.
As fourth, okay.
Oh, are we counting Annabelle Homecoming in the list?
Yes.
Okay, that might be higher up. We'll stick it next though. Annabelle Homecoming below that.
That's number 5.
Then The Curse of La Llorona.
Yep. Number 6. And then you're putting Nun at the very bottom.
Yeah, the Nun. It's one of those two at the bottom. How did that do?
If I was to tell you the best rated film is The Conjuring.
Yes.
Second was Conjuring 2. So you pretty much were right. You said they're pretty much interchangeable. So yeah, I'd give you both of them. Then number 3 on the list is Annabelle Creation.
Okay, yeah.
I did brag about how good it was, and you weren't listening.
Well, I did think maybe, yeah, but okay, yeah.
Then it's Annabelle Comes Home with the Avengers style movie.
Okay. Yeah.
And so they're all based on kind of what they would say is fresh, and then the rotten films are, and again the next one is The Curse of La Llorona, and then Annabelle, the first Annabelle. I did say it was bad. You weren't listening. And then The Nun. The Nun is the least.
I just remember Annabelle being sold very well at the beginning. Like it did have a good marketing, so I thought it would be higher. But I guess once people saw it, as you say, it wasn't so good. So I got Nun right.
Yes, Nun, and I'd give you the first 2 because they're pretty much interchangeable in that.
Yeah, what did they get as the top 2? Conjuring 2. Did they get?
Yeah, so they got 85% for Conjuring 1 and 80% for Conjuring 2.
Okay.
So they're really high rated horror films. And And in terms of kind of like, if you talk about, as you said there, like in terms of how much they cost, so these films aren't expensive. 20 million for the first Conjuring film. The first Annabelle, like 6.5. The Conjuring 2 cost more, 40 million. That's all James Wan's money, I guess. Creation 15-22 for The Nun, you said was cheap. It's actually quite expensive compared to some of the others. The Curse of L'Oreal is 9. And then Annabelle Comes Home. So the Avengers style horror movie, it cost 27 million. So just slightly more than The Nun. But in terms of like, if you look at worldwide gross for all of these films, like Conjuring 300 million, Annabelle, as you said, 250 million, Conjuring 2, 320 million, Creation got 306, The Nun, 365 million. The Curse of, just using kind of the Conjuring name, The Curse of L'Oreal got 120 million. Annabelle Comes Home, the Avengers film, so far sitting on 80 million worldwide. So, for films that cost, the total cost of these films are like 140 million, but they've grossed like 1.7 billion. So for a cinematic universe, and especially in terms of like percentage gross and stuff, this is a very, very successful cinematic universe. People say, everyone wants a cinematic universe. It's not working. I mean, it just goes to show if you've got a good director and you've got a good vision, you start with a good foundation film, The Conjuring, and then you spin off other films slowly, but then make a good sequel again. You can build a slow build, a cinematic universe. You don't need to just chuck Batman and Superman in a film and just say fight, and it's your universe. And then we'll build other characters off of that. You can do it.
We don't need to build the universe. DC Comics already built it for us, so we'll just put them on the screen.
Exactly, and that just goes to show if Universal were to make these, what were they? The Mummy, the Dracula, Invisible Man. If they made them in small scale horror films, there's a market for them. Huge market.
Build up something of their own rather than just ripping it off.
Instead of doing the big budget mummy films, do a small budget horror film, and then you could have your horror characters assembled together, and you could build your own cinematic universe. You don't have to
create your own character.
Well, these ones are their own. I think they're within their copyright or something. But it just goes to show you can make these films. You don't have to spend as much money on them. And Blumhouse is a great example. They make small movies, but they gross loads of money, like the Purge franchise, the Paranormal Activity franchise, the Saw franchise. They're all kind of small budget films, and they work. And you can do things like this. So so that's kind of our and that's kind of our the thing. Our kind of topic for today was about a shared cinematic universe.
Very much.
And I would say the third most successful cinematic universe. If I was to say, for me personally, Pixar. Pixar is a shared universe. I don't care what people say. It's always got characters of other characters within those films. And then second would be the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Second place.
Yes, because Pixar really, they're the ones who started it all off.
True.
Brilliant. So we've come to the end of our kind of thing, but now we come to our first kind of segments where we do My Guy Quick Reviews, where we talk about things that we've either played, watched, read. We do a quick reviews of them, and then we'll do our quick previews of what we're doing next week.
Okay.
So what have you been up to?
What have you been up to?
So I've been watching something called the Football World Cup. For those who don't know, the Women's Football World Cup is happening in the United Soccer, yes. It's football. We play with our feet. You kick a ball. How simpler could you get? Anyway,
Stop picking it up.
Yes, the Lionesses unfortunately lost last night. I've been following them. They sent me, they did incredibly well. They lost last night, so that's a shame, but still got a chance of getting third or fourth place, so that's great. And it was good. It's good to see people want to play for your team, play for the badge for your country. It's
all female commentators as well.
Yeah, it was really good. They're really kind of like for the BBC. It's on prime time. It's on HD. It's on everything. Free to air. It's got good exposure, especially for this country where men's football kind of like is the number one sport, I guess. But it's brilliant that they've put this They put it prime time, and it's everywhere, and it's free to air, which is great. So loads of people can watch it.
Equality.
Yeah, so I've been watching that. I've been watching more of the Cricket World Cup. If anybody wants to know, just message me later. It's going well. The other thing I watched this week is something called Big Little Lies. So this is a TV show. It was supposed to be like a mini series, just 7 episodes, but there's a season 2. Season 1 stars Reese Witherspoon, Nicole Kidman, Selena Woodley, the girl from that YA novel. And it's got the guy from True Blood. It's got Adam Scott. It's got a good star cast. It's really well shot. It's HBO series. They chuck loads of money at it. It's 7 episodes. It's about one. So Zoe Kravitz is in it as well. It's about one thing. It's about something that happens at the start of episode 1, and by the end of it, you kind of work out. Well, they show you what happens, and it ends, and you're like, okay, season 1's finished. That's it. It's pretty much that. There's nothing else to it. But then season 2 starts, and there's more of an investigation, kind of unraveling more things. And season 1 was slow and kind of meandering anyway, and I kind of stuck with it because I just wanted to know the ending. Though it's quite boring. Loads of people love it. Yeah, the acting's good and all that. I get it, but for me, it's quite boring. And then the second series, I'm not interested in. I know they got Meryl Streep in there, but it's just I'm just not interested at all. I was just like, it's finished for me. I know what happened. There's nothing else. Nothing else is happening. Nothing interesting.
Right. Okay.
So I've been watching that. I'm just trying to get through the final season of Arrested Development, which has been quite funny. It's still good.
Okay. Cool. We were talked about Superman recently, so I went back and watched Superman 3 and Superman 4, just because we were both a bit hazy on exactly what happened in what order, so I watched those.
Yes.
They're still pretty good films. They're still good. They weren't as bad as I remembered, actually. Both of them involve, Superman going through trials and things, and I think maybe has a bit more depth than we probably realised as kids, as to sort of more human issues when people get sick or they're sort of battling themselves.
Yeah.
And asking for help and things like that, themes like that. So yeah, I did that. I watched Toy Story 4.
Oh, spoilers.
Big spoilers.
I haven't seen it yet.
I'm not going to spoil it, don't worry. But I'll
Is this
spoil.
a cinema watch?
Yeah, definitely just watch it. Cinema. I wasn't looking forward to it because obviously Toy Story 3 ended everything. It seemed like that was the end. I was like, why are you making a fourth one? So
is there any story for a fourth one? Is there any need?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the thing you realise is that Toy Story 3 was a goodbye to Andy.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
So they've got a new kid now.
Spoiler alert for Toy Story 3.
Spoiler alert, they're going to go to a new kid. That's pretty obvious, and I think
that was given.
I think you need to know
that little girl at the end. He sees sees it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm going to spoil the name. Her name's Bonnie. There you go. That's the only spoiler I'm going to give. Okay, so don't worry. But yeah, I won't give anything else away. But I just say, yeah, it's another film worth watching in the franchise. Forky seems like a bit of a weird character. We see that in the trailers. Forky.
Yeah.
He seemed like a bit of a strange character, like maybe a bit of a special needs character that may come off badly or may come off well. I wasn't quite sure what, but he comes off more as a comedy character, and it works quite well. He's not as silly as he seems in the trailer. So he's fun. Good movie.
What else?
The other thing I've been doing for the last 2 months, but finally finished a game on the Vita, which is called Criminal Girls 2 Party Favors, which is it's like an RPG, old top-down sort of RPG, where you walk around and you encounter a creature and you've got to fight, with your special skills. You have to choose through the skills or things. But the difference with this one is that it's set in hell, and you're basically you're leading a group of delinquents through hell who have a chance to redeem themselves, basically. But then sort of things get mixed up, and the story's good. I quite like the story. Yeah. You get to know the characters. There's a bit of weirdness to it, like There's some sort of mini games that are a bit risque, sort of hinting at risque stuff. So it's got some weird Japanese elements as well because it's from Japan. And also the unique element of when you're in the battles is that it's actually the characters actually suggest what moves you do, and then that's all you've got to choose from. So that sort of changes up how you play the game. So you haven't got the full list of your skills all the time. So that was quite interesting. But the thing about it is it's taken me ages to get through it though. Just having to level up and things. There's a casual mode where you don't have to level up as much, but you still have to really get through the game. So that could be a downside for it really, because if you're trying to invest in the story and see the human sides of these characters, you then have to go back and you have to battle over and over to try and beat this next boss, because you just can't beat him otherwise. Yeah.
Sounds quite good. And then stuff for next week. So PlayStation Plus released a list of what games they were going to release, and they're going to release something called Pro Evolution Soccer 2019.
Yes.
But they did the Kansas City shuffle, and they've given us Detroit and Heavy Rain instead.
I'm looking forward to Detroit.
So no.
Heavy Rain's an old game.
Yeah, it is. So it's part of that deluxe edition includes Heavy Rain. So we get Detroit, get Heavy Rain, you get soundtrack, and you get some other stuff. Yeah, I don't think I'll play them.
I really want to play Detroit. I did not want to pay full price for it, so that's good for me.
So yeah, so that's just come out now. You know what? I will give it a go, but I don't think it's that kind. It's not the kind of game I'd be well into.
Yeah. Did you play Heavy Rain?
Never played Heavy Rain.
Oh, you should.
I can do now.
Yeah, you should play Heavy Rain. It's a good game. It's quick time events, but it attaches you to sort of the things that you'd be actually doing in the world. So it's quite effective in that, and yeah, it's got a good story. I'd say it finishes off well. It's good.
I might play that then, because that's part of this, and it's coming. It'll be one of the games as part of the kind of the suite, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah,
it's not that long either, so you should get through it.
Oh, cool. That'd be all right then. Yeah, I'm not looking to play a game forever, so I might give that a go. But disappointed that they swapped Pro Evolution Soccer. Oh.
Yeah, that'd be a good party game, but you know.
Exactly. And then for next week, of course, Spider-Man Homecoming sequel, Far From Home. Far From Home. We're looking forward to that. So that's our next big one. Yes, it's out as of today in this country. I don't know about worldwide. But yeah, in the United Kingdom. So yeah, so that's a definite watch for next week. Yeah, have you still got Toy Story 4 to watch? Are you going to watch that? I will, but I'll wait for Spider-Man first, I think. Yeah, okay. And then once the difficulty is being a slightly older person and going into watching a kids film. It's choosing the right time where there aren't children, so I don't look like I'm out of place. So it's it's one of those films I want to watch in the cinema. But you almost have to watch on VOD at home by yourself. Sitting on out the way as well in the cinema. Because you don't want to be on the same row as these kids. You don't want anything to do with them. You're not there for anything but to watch the film. And it's just difficult. I have midnight showings. Adult only showings, You know, if you've got like a Toy Story hat or something, you can wear that. Make it sort of blend in. But then everyone will want to touch the hat. They'll be like, "Oh, where did we get one of them from?" I'm like, no, it's not for you. Take a whole load in there still and make some money. Sell them on. It's not a bad idea. But yes, I definitely want to watch that. But I think I'll watch Homecoming sequel. There's more chance of watching that. Yeah. Yeah, that's the one I've been really looking forward to as well. See how they address kind of like the issues with or where they go next. So it'd be interesting to see how they do that. Yeah, definitely. How they're going to bring in Spider-Man characters in when they go to a completely different universe. So we'll see. Yeah. So that's one. It's the big thing for next week, I think, and just watch a bit more Preacher. Finish Cricket World Cup because that finishes soon, and that's it really. Oh, wicked. Brilliant. So guys, if you want to contact us, we have a MyGuy Reviews @gmail.com. We have a Twitter handle, called MyGuy Reviews. We have an Instagram called MyGuy Reviews. If you have any topic suggestions or anything, email them across. Put in the tagline, put in Brig, or put in Monkey, and then it'll go to the various. Then we will pick them up from there. So that way we can't see each other's kind of topic ideas either.
Yeah, ask if you want them to be secret on the topic ideas. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. And then you can come in super cold, not seen any film in the franchise, and you have to work your way through it.
Yes. Just guess.
Yes. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.